You are listening to the Wildlife Photography Podcast with Rob Reed and Josh Galicki, bringing together the love of nature and photography. Episode 9, Photographing Wildlife in Africa, and we're joined by a special guest. Well, hello everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of the Wildlife Photography Podcast with me, Rob Reed, and my co-host, Josh Galicki. Hi Josh, how's it going?
Good, Rob. Good to be back. We haven't talked in about a week or two, so
it's been a while, hasn't it?
It has, yeah.
It has. Anyway, what have you been up to?
You know, not a lot of shooting lately, actually. I'm still waiting for my renovation to finish so I can move back to my place.
Is that still ongoing?
It's still ongoing, yes. It's the never-ending project, but I'm within like 2 to 3 weeks, I think, when I can move back, and I'm looking forward to it because I was out there just the other day. Pine warblers are back. Some of the egrets are back. Osprey came back a couple weeks ago. So there's going to be a lot to photograph. I'm looking forward to it, but I'm getting trigger happy. That's for sure.
All those spring migrants coming in. Yeah,
there's
well, I've been hearing some of the warblers coming back into the local woodland, just by the house. So the chiff-chaffs are in and, that sort of thing. So, but unlike you, I haven't picked up a camera in weeks.
Yeah, it's bad when that happens. I will be in the UK soon. Hopefully we can meet up, Rob. I'll be heading to Shetland at the end of June. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that because Jen and I are going at the beginning of June, and we're going to unfortunately miss you because, you're going 2 or 3 weeks later. But as you say, hopefully, you're flying into Heathrow, and Heathrow is not that far from me. So hopefully we'll be able to, meet up if we can make that happen, but we'll see. But yeah, anyway, so today I thought we'd talk about photographing wildlife in Africa, because African mammals in particular are probably the most popular subject in wild art and a lot of the other photography competitions. So I thought it would be a really good subject for us to talk about, because I know you've been to Africa quite a lot. I've never been. But we're also joined by somebody today who's also one of the new judges on Wild Art Photographer of the Year this year, who's also very experienced in photographing African mammals in particular, and leads tours there regularly. And we're joined by Michael Snedic. Hello, Michael. How are you doing?
Yeah, really well, thanks, Rob. G'day, Josh. How are you?
Michael, great to have you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, it's good to have you on the show. So, Michael,
second time in a week that we chat.
Indeed, yeah. Because if people haven't already seen it, Michael and I did a live broadcast last weekend, a couple of days ago, because we're recording this on it's Wednesday for you, Michael. It's still Tuesday for Josh and me, because we had a bit of a.
I got up out of bed. Josh has finished work. You're in the evening, probably having a hot toddy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because it's 10 o'clock at night. Well, it's actually 10:30 at night for me. It's 5:30 in the afternoon for Josh, and it's 7:30 in the morning for you on the Wednesday.
Yeah,
Michael,
that's right.
So being in the UK, Australia, and America, it's kind of difficult to make these things happen. But anyway, we managed it. So well done for that. But so we did this live, didn't we, a few days ago, where we talked about some of the new categories for Wild Art Photographer of the Year this year, in particular Tiny, which is your concept, which is quite the opposite side of things when we're talking about large African mammals. But anyway.
No, definitely. As you mentioned, when you look at competitions and wild art in particular, it's interesting how the African mammals, the Afrin and the birds, I guess, as well. But they're just so unbelievably photogenic, so easy to photograph. And no matter where you are across Africa, not just, it could be Kenya, Botswana, Namibia. I mean, no matter where you go, it's really special. And as you know, I just came back from there last week. So after 3.5 long years, as you guys know, us Aussies were locked up for 2 years. We weren't allowed out anywhere because of COVID. And it was great. So I had a group fully booked, went to Kenya, and it was absolutely brilliant. I mean, really, really special to be back. Even though I've been many times over the years, it was every moment I really treasured. It was fantastic. Really, really great experience.
No, I thought this would be a really good discussion to, to get the, particularly you on to the podcast to talk about this, because I know, obviously you've been to Africa a number of times. I know Josh has been, and I've never been. So yeah, I thought that sort of triangle was quite good fun.
You don't know what you're missing, Rob.
No, exactly. it's
Let's work on it, Josh. We've got to
on
get
my
Rob over
You
there.
got to get him there.
But yeah, I've got to get to Africa. But interestingly, I look at it from the point of view of having coordinated so many competitions over the years, obviously in particular Bird Photographer of the Year and now Wild Art. Obviously not with Bird Photographer of the Year, African mammals, but there were a lot of African birds in that competition. But Wild Art in particular, and I know things like natural, Wildlife Photographer of the Year, for example, a really good proportion of those entries comprise African wildlife, and in particular the sort of top 5, as it were. Why do you think that is?
I think that what I briefly mentioned, the fact that the ease, I mean, Africa is, it's just so unbelievable. I mean, you can talk about it, hear about it, see the photos, but when you're there and you're in a vehicle and these animals are totally and utterly, completely, in most cases, unafraid of humans. I mean, I've got, apart from taking photos, apart from teaching photography to my group, the videos from my iPhone that I have of lions walking straight past, pausing at the vehicle, looking up at you, walking past. They are not afraid, and they look at the vehicle as a whole. They don't then. There's no issue with that. But if you were to then hop out, well, obviously it's a different matter. But they're just so close. Cheetahs on the bonnet. I've got video of cheetahs on the bonnet of the vehicle. I've got giraffes that come on over and just walk straight past. We've got the herds of elephants with the baby in the middle being, looked after, with the matriarch usually front and left, just walking in between the vehicle. Oh, that's why. And the leopard in the tree, you drive on up and it's as if you're not there, guys. It's as you know, Josh, it's amazing.
Yeah.
And you don't know where to turn. And when I present tours, we always make sure that we have plenty of room. There were 6 of us. We had 2 vehicles. Everyone had a window seat and could go left and right. We had the roof open, so you can stand up and you can photograph. We have bean bags, which I always request that you nestle your camera and lens. It's just incredible. I mean, even compared to back here in Australia, where I live, and we've got wonderful wildlife and birds, etc. But it's another level. It really is very, very special. And I'm sure you agree, Josh. You've been a few times as well.
And I think from a photographer's perspective, when you go to Africa, in my opinion, there's no better place for fine art, black and white photography like Africa. You get these wide open vistas and, the textures on the elephants or lions and so forth. It's really the best place for that. And I think if you're a photographer and you're making prints or you're selling prints, people want that on their walls. I mean, I love to photograph, songbirds and warblers. People really don't want a Blackburnian warbler in their living room. But if you have Kilimanjaro in a black and white, you're one of the few, Rob. If you have Kilimanjaro in the background and some elephants walking past Amboseli, it takes it to just a whole nother level. Do
you think it's those species that people can really relate to because they know, even if they've never seen an elephant or a lion, they relate to them immediately. Do you think that's what the draw is?
I think that's part of it. I think for the folks who are going there on tours, definitely, and for people purchasing the photography, consumers of it, absolutely. Yeah. I think that's key.
Yeah, it's an instant relationship. Between with those animals. Absolutely.
I think also here, certainly in Australia, David Attenborough has been a legend for 50 plus years. I mean, really, most people know David Attenborough, and when you see the documentaries and what you just said, Josh, that classic, which we were at, I was there a week ago, Amboseli, snow on top, elephants in the base. I know it's been done many a time, but when you're the one doing it, when I had people, some had been before, and 2 of my guests had never been. And it's like tears in your eyes moment, because you're there in the open in this vehicle. The elephants are walking straight towards you. You've got this incredible, Mount Kilimanjaro, which of course is Amboseli in Kenya, because we didn't have much snow on top, and it was interesting. There'd been a drought, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But it rained quite heavily, and the following morning there was snow. And so then when we were there, we had this incredible view again of Kilimanjaro with snow, with the elephants. It was, very, very special. And people relate. I mean, people, it's quite amazing. And when you see these animals so close, whether it's a portrait, whether it's a behavior, I think it's just a wonderful thing. And what you said, Josh, black and white, doing the monochrome, with framing, fantastic. Yeah. A real feature on a wall.
And you were just there in Amboseli, you were mentioning, Michael. And so I've been there. I've been to Amboseli. When was it? November, late October, early November. And I know a lot of folks go there for the migration, and they're there in some of the dry season. March can be wet. What were the conditions like? You mentioned there was a drought. How different was it from some of the times where, where I think, I don't know if it's considered the high season or a lot, but I know most people go from August to November. It's trafficked a lot by photographers at that point. I've always wanted to go in March, actually.
Thanks, Josh. The reason that I chose March was that I try to avoid the high season, the crazy season. It's busy, it's expensive. And I was telling Rob just during the week that there had been drought, full-on drought. There had been no rain for at least a year. Huge amount of animals had died, lots of elephants, including the famous Tusker Tim. He died in the drought. It was really quite, and the people, the locals, the farming, it was quite dire. But unbelievably, when we were there, the drought broke. It was the most incredible thing, because in 45 minutes of rain, it absolutely poured torrentially. We drove out, we waited, and we drove out, and the creek crossings, we couldn't get across because of the water. The next day they had more rain. They've had more rain since. Thankfully it started, but then let's go across. Part 2 of my tour was in the Masai Mara, and I have never seen it so green and lush. Absolutely unbelievable. Green, lush, as far as the eye can see. It was amazing. And the amount of animals that were mating, breeding. The guides were saying that this is a bumper season, and it will be because of that. So 2 contrasts, but thankfully the rains happen. But it's like a seasonal. When I say seasonal, of an afternoon, late afternoon, you get the thunderstorm. It's gone, and then you're fine. So for us, it didn't affect anything. As far as the tour, we still went out, but thankfully it did rain, because the guides were saying that another month and they would have been in dire straits. It was getting really quite bad.
Wow.
Yeah, they must have thanked you for the rain then, Michael.
Absolutely. Yeah. It was a good, one of the fellows in the Masai Mara came from Amboseli, and I showed him the video, and he had tears. Like that's where he's from, his family struggling. And I heard about.
Must have been an amazing moment, actually, because I know what it's like when the occasion it doesn't rain in the UK for a while, which did happen. Well, has happened actually over the last few years. During the summer, we've had 6 or 8 weeks where it just hasn't, not a drop, which is really unusual. Yeah,
6 to 8 weeks of no rain in England.
Exactly. I mean, can you believe it? It does happen. It has started to happen. And, I know when that breaks, it's just everybody's, it's raining. Can you imagine that in the UK? People actually cheering the fact that it's raining. So if to go for a year,
I know,
somewhere like that,
really
and to lose a load of animals. Yeah.
And dust. I mean, the swirling dust. And it was wonderful when it did rain, and we headed on out. The air was clean, and the dust was kind of gone. And it was really nice.
Yeah.
It helps with the camera gear for sure. The dust can be a big problem.
Big thing on that, Josh. Yeah, I always tell my guests, my participants, never, ever, if you can possibly help it, don't change your lenses, you know, when a big truck's going past with dust or out in the field. I mean, it's just so hard to keep the dust out. Always, I've got a Giotto rocket. It's a puffer, the big puffer that I use. I use a brush. It was a little bit of an issue, especially with open vehicles. We had little like blankets that we would cover over in between shooting because there was so much dust, and we'd come back and luckily we had a laundry service, and, you know, you put your stuff to be washed and it came back a different color, not because they bleached it, but because they got rid of the dust.
Yeah. Wow.
But it's great from that point on.
That must be a real problem, actually, you know, out in somewhere like that, you know, that dust problem, which digital never solved that particular issue, no matter how hard the manufacturers have tried.
Exactly. Luckily, it only lasted a couple of days when the drought broke, and that was part one of our tour. And then, of course, the second part I mentioned in the Masai Mara was amazing, and it was all totally fine. But it was a great experience. We just going back to Amboseli, I had with my group a remarkable hour and a half with Craig. His name is the Tusker. He's now the biggest Tusker in the world. When he stands, his tusks virtually touch the ground. He's such a gentle giant. He's 52. Hopped out of the vehicle, lay on the ground on a poncho with beanbag, and did the old wide angle looking up, and it was just incredible. And I'd photographed so many elephants, and after a while, it needs to be something special, something different. And I tell you, it was amazing. It was really good. And all of a sudden, one of the guides, Charles, his name was, he goes, "Mr. Michael, quick!" He said, "Get in the vehicle." But what's going on? And I looked around, and there was Townsend. Townsend's the grumpy one that turned up. He's 47, and he gets really puppy with people. So it's quite interesting. You got this gentle giant, and then his mate turns up, and it was really quite an interesting little scenario. But having them both there, right 3-4 meters from the vehicle, eating away, brilliant. That's amazing experience.
The one thing I've noticed with Tuskers too, especially like your Craig, we ran into Craig when I was there a couple of years ago, and it's such a special experience. I've been to South Africa a few times, Kruger, and, you know, the elephants there. I mean, there's just, you know, you just don't, you can't appreciate it until you see, an animal like Craig, how special Craig is. I will ask a follow-up question though, and I wanted to get your opinion on this. So a lot of people, when they go to Africa, they're in North America and many places because, you know, walking around won't kill you with wildlife. The obvious choice to get perspective is to get low. Sometimes it's difficult when you're in Africa. Obviously, you're in a vehicle. Yeah. There are certain instances where we were able to get out of the vehicle and get that lower perspective, whether it's, you know, the dry lake bed in front, you know, with the elephants crossing and so forth. Tell me about how you were able to get out and what instances where you were able to get that lower perspective, because most people are confined in the vehicles due to, you know, safety concerns and so forth.
Yeah, no, in most cases, you do not leave that vehicle for obvious reasons. But when the guides, and we had two guides there, James and Charles, that I mentioned, both 10 to 15 years, incredibly experienced. And they make sure, I mean, the area that you're in, it's an area that's as safe as safe. You can look around. There's planes, and basically we were in the open. So with Craig, he was completely, totally relaxed, and we were able to just hop out of the vehicle, and we were right near the vehicle, and he wasn't interested in any way. He said so many people, vehicle, every time people go there, they try and see this amazing Tusker. And using the wide angle lens and looking up, it's a different perspective. Yeah. Again, it's been done before, but it's to me, it just was, it highlighted the incredible size of the tusks. And then another shot was just on the vehicle itself, zooming in, just doing that part head shot with those amazing lashes, for example. I mean, that was great as well. And what I love, I won't necessarily do the whole body. I'll just do the headshot with the trunk in that lovely curved shape as the food's going to the mouth. And, and then doing holding the camera in portrait position, for example, and just getting the front on shot. And trying different things. We can say it's been done before, but when it's you doing it, oh my
That's right.
goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially
Well,
with the
And
dust
especially,
kick up and drama, and
yeah,
you get some of that drama in the skies and the clouds. It's amazing.
yeah.
We were able to get out a few times, but what we did also, and it actually worked a little bit, although I had to throw the lens and the camera away. I took an old, I'm a Canon shooter, so I had an old Rebel, and I had I think it's a Jobu. Is it a Jobu? It's like a Gorilla Pod, a
oh
flexible. So we
yes,
put
yeah,
it
Yeah,
on,
yeah, I know the one. Yeah,
and we
yeah.
attached it to the front grille of the Land Cruiser, and I had a remote trigger on it, and I had a wide angle. So when the elephants would walk close to the vehicle, I would just, snap it. But when the drive was over, we had to clean it off every night. The lens got really beat up, but we got some pretty intimate moments with the trigger, actually.
Isn't it David Yarrow? He does the stuff with the remote, and he puts the
the
camera on the
remotes,
ground in
Yeah.
front
yeah,
of the elephants. And I know he's had a few cameras destroyed by them,
yeah,
Yeah.
but he
yeah,
gets some pretty amazing stuff using
yeah.
remotes.
His
So it's
access, though, is
yeah,
unparalleled. I would
yeah,
love to have his access.
yeah, exactly. That's the stuff you don't hear about
Yeah.
so much. But actually, isn't it the thing? I mean, when Michael, when you sort of take somebody who hasn't been before to Africa, do you? And Josh and I have had this discussion before, that when you go somewhere where everything is new, then you're less likely to experiment with your photography, because you want to bank those record shots first. So you want the classic shots of African wildlife first. Do you find that that's what people tend to go for initially when you first take them somewhere like that?
Absolutely, absolutely. And there are people. I mean, you can appreciate all different skill levels and experience levels, but when you're there and you see the elephant family walking towards you, and you just want that nice portrait shot that won't necessarily, win first prize in the competition, but it's your experience. And I guess because every morning you go out in the morning, we always go pre-sunrise. We want to get that lovely light as it's happening. And then you go out again, later in the afternoon. So 2 a day. If you're doing a trip, a 10-day trip or a 9-day trip, I mean, that's quite a few safaris. So initially you get shots of the elephants, you get the lovely shot of the giraffe, you'll get the lion sitting there. But then, of course, then you go again and there's more lions and more elephants. So you go again. And so then it becomes a bit more experimental because they've already got those shots in the bag, so to speak. Same with the silhouette. I mean, we've seen it all many a time, haven't we, guys? I mean, the silhouettes of the African animals. But when you're there and you're on a plane looking across and there's giraffes or elephants or whatever it happens, wildebeest with an amazing sunrise, you do try and get that shot.
Yeah.
But then, of course, you can be a bit more experimental. And then I like getting rim lighting and zooming in on certain aspects of the animal and getting in nice and close and getting more artistic. And I've seen, goodness, many of the wonderful shots in wild art in the last couple of years through the competition.
Yeah.
So it's both. That's what I find, certainly, that let's get those shots and get them out of the way, and then let's get experimental as well. But not everyone's into that. Some people just love to shoot and capture the animal as is, a nice portrait or portraits. But then there's the behavior as well. And in all the years, and for me, I mean, I've been to Namibia, Botswana, Sabi, Madagascar, Tanzania, Kenya multiple times, gorillas in Africa multiple times. I mean, but any kind of behavior excites people, and the guides know it. It's just they work. That cheetah that's about to pounce on a poor gazelle or impala, which people go, oh, that's terrible, but it is nature, it's natural. But being there, seeing it, and photographing, it's adrenaline. I mean, forget drugs. It's just unbelievable, and you're there witnessing this in front of you.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose if you go on for a lot of people, this is and for me included, this would be a trip of a lifetime. So, you're going to want those classic shots that you see. You're going to want to bag those.
And there's a limited time for a lot of the classical shots too. And I learned, Kenya, especially because you're near the equator, that golden light and that special light that comes up, it's very fleeting. It happens so quickly. Whereas, where I shoot, for instance, in North America here, the golden hour, if you will, lasts a lot longer than it does when you're in Kenya. You can get some amazing light, but it changes and happens so quickly when you're close to the equator.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Sorry,
really
no,
difficult. Yeah, no, it's really difficult, I think, because I see, and I know you guys do as well, obviously, judging the competition, if we want to talk about competition photography for a while, there are so many of those shots that come in, and as lovely as they are, and they are, those classic, silhouettes, sunset silhouettes that we see, elephants and lions and all the rest of it, the rim lighting, the back lighting, all that sort of stuff, the standard kill shots, the lion with blood all over its face, the sleeping lion in the sun, the black and white stuff, obviously, that people are taking with the harsher light conditions generally in the middle of the day. They are brilliant shots and we all like looking at them, but we've seen them so many times because those people are sat next to half a dozen other people taking exactly the same thing. And this goes on and repeats itself again and again and again throughout the year. I mean, how many photographers must go through somewhere like Amboseli every year? I mean, the number must be astronomical. And when you start adding those things up, you start to realize that it's very, very difficult to do something different. So if judges are seeing this sort of stuff again and again and again, it's quite difficult, I think, to have a picture of an African mammal which does well in a competition, to get something special that actually is going to turn a judge's head. Would you agree with that?
I think absolutely. And when you look through some of the winners of let's if we talk natural history wildlife photographer of the year, for example, over the years, and you look at what wins or what does really well, and I mean, you're right. It has to be different. It has to be something that's unique. And the images that we look at and go, oh my God, wow, that's amazing. It's either some moment captured that is so unusual, so unique, or it's some mind-blowing lighting or something. But you're right, because there are just so many. And if a judge like myself, Josh, and others go through hundreds of images of the same animal, and it's a nice animal, let's say, we'll talk about a lion with a lovely mane and it's sitting there looking at the camera. Well, that's nice, but basically it's not necessarily going to win the competition, because what makes that image different, special to all the other images? What makes it a wow factor? What makes it oh my goodness, this is right up there and it could win the category? So it does need to be different. And that's what I'm loving. Very, very exciting when I see the images and with wild art, people are getting so creative and realizing they have to be, because we're no longer paying for film, paying for processing, limited to 36. You can take thousands of shots in a day. You can spend all day editing. I mean, when you look at it, and the eye tracking, the abilities, of course, with the different cameras we have, you guys have talked about, but with I'm a Nikon user, of course, and I've got the Z9, which is remarkable, the best camera I've ever used in my life. It is truly an amazing piece of technology. And you look at the OM systems, the OM1 and the Canon R3, R5, R6, Sony. I mean, it goes on and on. And so as far as capturing behavior, I really believe won't be long. There'll be shots that have never been seen before, because animals doing things that are moving so fast, and yet the technology's there now to capture them a lot easier. But then at the same time, you really need to look and go, well, how can I make this interesting? I'm a believer of using long lenses sometimes for macro, and then using fisheye lenses for wildlife. I've done that with birds, setting up on tripods using fisheye lenses and having birds fly down, and I'm there behind a tree with a remote. I mean, it's just different, and that's what I try and do.
Yeah. And I think in Africa too, there's so much subject variation, and a lot of it I think has to do with what subjects do you choose? Because I've been there, and maybe instead of an elephant, instead of a lion, there's a leopard tortoise at a rest stop, or there's lizard, so you can get really creative, I think, with your subjects and do many things outside of the big five, right? And outside of a lot of the more popular mammals. Africa has so much, but for some people that comes maybe on their second trip, or maybe they specialize in that. I mean, you could go to Africa and just focus on macro or herps,
Well, I
snakes.
was going to ask you about that
So
actually,
much, yeah.
because when you first go to Africa and Michael, when you take groups there, presumably people are just focused on those large mammals. That's what they want. Do they ignore everything else pretty much, or?
I can't believe this is exactly the conversation I had in the last fortnight. I mean, literally what you're saying is the conversation. And I was trying to explain, and I'm saying to the folks, you're here, you're in Africa. Of course, we will get the shots of the elephants, the lion, the leopard, the cheetah, the zebra, the giraffe, the wildebeest. I mean, absolutely, the hippo. But there's so much more, and the guides are even programmed to get those animals. And I'd be saying, guy, and every day without fail, I'd say, guys, please, let's, if you see a black-bagged jackal, or if you see, just anything that's different, smaller birds, some of the, we had an hour there where we had 5 different species. It blows my mind. It's never happened. 5 species in an hour and a quarter of kingfishers. And one of them there was a pair displaying incredible, aqua-colored wings, and it was fantastic. And the group suddenly forgot about all the big stuff, and we had a ball. It was brilliant. But some of the smaller animals and the iridescent, the lizards running around, and I find that, I totally agree with you as well, Josh. That's as much fun, if not even more exciting, when you've been a few times.
Yeah.
As well as those amazing experiences that we have to supply our guests, those experiences, because that is what they come for as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the irony is that perhaps a really good picture of some of those lesser known species might be more eye catching than the big mammals because the internet and it's just flooded with those pictures, and people are so used to them. Certainly, between the three of us, we're really used to seeing them because of the industry that we're in, and we get exposed to them all the time. So yeah, and there are very, very few images of those larger mammals that really stand out. I mean, I can think of 2 or 3. I mean, I can think of I remember Mo Murad's picture of the lion that looked like Narnia, where he'd used a little bit a slow shutter speed to capture that lion, and that was really painterly, and that was so different. And then if you remember Trey Anfield's picture of the gorilla, just the eye through the bark, which is really inventive. I thought it was just a cracking shot.
That's and as certainly I'm going to say here, but as a judge, that's the sort of thing that really works for me. I remember seeing that, thinking, wow. How many shots, and I've taken many as well, of the portrait of the gorilla, but that was really interesting. And Trey kind of looked, outside the box, and I loved it. Can I give an example of an image? And I know we're talking African wildlife, but for me, many years ago, I remember an image that was taken, and it was the winner of Natural History, or as it was, BBC Wildlife Photographer. And it was of the ants, the cutter ants.
I remember
Bensi, is it pronounced Bensi Mate, the Hungarian photographer?
Yeah.
And having that image with those ants, with the light underneath, and one of them was looking through the gap, and I just thought, oh my God, that is so amazing. And I know we've seen it since, but to me, that was one of those images that I thought, wow, here it is. It's ants winning Natural History Wildlife Photographer. And I look at some of the winners in wild art, and they have been so incredible. They've been different. They've been unique. And I think that's what we're looking for. And what about yourself, Josh? I mean, when obviously I'm in my first year here judging, and you've judged before, but what do you look for? And we're talking African wildlife. What would you look for in images that make them stand out?
It's tough. It uniqueness, I guess. And I know that sounds like a simple answer, but yeah, something that we haven't seen before, and that's very, very difficult. Some of the stuff that we've seen when it comes to African wildlife, I think that's been more unique, as Rob was just implying. It's not the big five, or it's not the mammals. It's birds, or it's snakes, or other types of lizards. That stuff stands out just because it's not photographed as much. I think the challenge too with the big mammals, uh, there's a lot of resident photographers who live in Africa and who shoot them all the time. And, it's very hard, I think, at least when it comes to behavior in certain situations, for folks who travel there once a year, maybe once in a lifetime, for instance, to top that in terms of what they can get, because they're always out there shooting. I think of a few photographers I know who live in Kenya and South Africa and so forth. So, yeah, I guess it would have to be uniqueness. And I know it's a simple answer, but and it's more difficult. As Rob says, the African animals top all of the other. I would say, wouldn't that be the big five, Rob? That's probably
Yeah.
the most when it comes to submissions.
Yeah, I think
Outside
so.
of
And as I
kingfisher
said,
and some popular
as
birds.
nice as they are, when you see another picture of an elephant or a lion or or a giraffe, or it's got to be really special to go into that sort of, oh yeah, let's shortlist that for further consideration, because you feel, sometimes you feel that you're doing the photographers a disservice by not putting some of these fantastic shots through. But the fact of the matter is, you have to see something a little different. You have to be able to stop a judge in their tracks and go, no, I want to see more of that. I want to take a closer look at that image. So yeah, it's tough.
And I see wild art too is more it's more about art. It's more about, being creative with photography. I do find a lot of African mammal shots are more behavior based, so they're more literal, right? So some of the shots that come in are fantastic, but they don't necessarily fit the brief as much as some of the more creative shots that we get, depending on the category.
Yeah, and I think, if you're in that unique situation and you're seeing some brilliant behavior, and you don't go to Africa regularly, you're more likely to want to shoot the literal representation of what you're seeing, rather than going, oh, hang on a minute, I know I might cock this up, but I'm going to be a bit more arty. It might not, I might not capture the moment. You're going to want to capture the moment first, aren't you? And by the time it's over, you might not have that opportunity then to be more creative with it. But I can think of circumstances like, perhaps lions sort of shaking off water from rain, that sort of thing, but with a slow shutter speed, rather than, the faster shutter speed, sort of capturing all the water droplets, freezing them in midair. You go for that sort of slower shutter speed, so you get, the motion blur and all that sort of thing going on. You're less likely to try something like that, if you don't go there regularly. And I think this is probably why we see a lot of very, very similar pictures, because people almost it's like, if you see an image again and again and again, that's imprinted on your brain, and the likelihood is you're going to want to try and replicate what you've already seen when you go to Africa. And I think that's part of it, rather than having a fresh approach. Is, if you were going to photograph something that you don't see very often in terms of images on the internet, for example, then maybe you'd have a bit of a sort of blanker canvas with it, for want of a better expression, rather than going and having already imprinted on your mind, the sorts of images that are generally produced of those animals. You're going to want to reproduce it, and it's human nature. So do you think it's almost a sort of self-fulfilling prophecy that you get the same thing over and over and over again, because the more you do it, the more you're going to get it?
I think it's interesting exactly what you've just said, Rob, and you touched on, Josh. I think of the example of one of the photographers, Greg Du Toit, South African photographer. He won Natural History a number of years ago. I just finished reading his book. It's a fantastic read, by the way. It's a really, really great book on his life story. But what you've got to remember is that he spent years and years. He was camp manager. He was photographer. So when we're on tour and we get the morning safari, the afternoon safari over a 10-day period, exactly what you said, Rob, you're limited. Whereas he can be there all year, all the seasons, year after year, 1,000 different attempts. I mean, he gets in the water, for goodness sake, and he gets down low and he does all this kind of stuff. And so he was able to capture things that were quite different, unique, and, you know, living in South Africa. But then I've heard many a story of people have been on safari and they're creative full stop from the beginning, and they just think, well, here's the scenario, here's the light, here's the animal, and they shoot. And they've been to Africa once, you know, once a year, or they go every second year, and they end up getting amazing shots. So, I mean, it's quite often it's the photographer, the person, their eye, how they interpret. But the fact that, I guess, the more you go, the more chance that you do have. And I totally understand that. And the guests that I had along, two of them I mentioned just briefly were new, hadn't experienced. The others had been before. But it was wonderful because I had the mix, and what I do is I always mix up with my guest. I always mix up. So one vehicle with this, you know, this lot of people, and then in the afternoon with another lot, and we mix up the drivers. And so you get to go out with different people and you see different things, and but being there and sitting for a while and then getting creative, like when you've got the lioness or the lionesses with their cubs. We've all seen the shots, they're all sitting there, but all of a sudden the sun's setting and the lights coming through, you know, backlighting their fur, and that's when you can start to play. You can get creative, and I love that. And spending the time just sitting there relaxing, and not feeling pressured, not like a stamp collection. Next, just sitting there, spending the time, photographing.
Almost sort of ticking things off a list.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
I've got to have this
exactly.
shot, I've got to have that shot, I've got to have the other.
Yeah, and you're not in the moment at that point. You're not taking what nature gives you, right? I mean, part of, I think, photography is just being in the moment, appreciating that it's out of your control and you're just capturing what comes in front of you.
Yeah.
You can't force the moment.
And I think sometimes, you know, and I'm guilty of this as much as the next person, but sometimes we can get too focused on actually taking pictures and not enjoy the moment itself and forget about that.
Yeah, I mention that regularly. Absolutely no question whatsoever. I say to folks, you're here, you've spent the money, you've spent the time, you've flown all the way. I had all Aussies on my trip, of course, and you've come all this way, the jet lag, and you're here. But seriously, once you've taken a few shots, just enjoy it as well. Don't just look at it through the camera or through the iPhone or the smartphone. And I have to admit, I mean, we may have seen all these experiences before and documentaries, and you get to see similar shots. But when you're there, just so unbelievably close to these animals, and it's not a fenced off area, like you're in the wild, it's magic. And the fact that we go out, we chase the light. We go out, as I mentioned, early in the morning, late afternoon. We're always there at sunset, and you never know what to expect. And even the rain, those afternoon storms, some of my favorite shots. And one, if I remember, the last Kenya trip I did in November 2019, I was in the Masai Mara, the same camp. I went back. I loved it so much. Known as Kachechi Bush Camp. And we went up into the plains, not a single person vehicle sound around. It was really dark and gloomy. And there were 3 baby elephants playing, wrestling with each other. And there was that one acacia tree in the distance blurred out, and then the big storm came across. To me, I still remember it as magic. I thought, you cannot create that. And then the next day we were out and we were really, really close, and we saw them. They were in the mud. They were playing and they were splashing mud all over themselves. And we saw that. And for me, go back to March 2015, Tanzania, that Ngorongoro crater, the amazing part of the world. It's this haven for wildlife that has what I call SWAT teams all around the outside. There's satellites, there's teams with machine guns, basically trying to stop poachers. So the wildlife feel free and safe. And the shot that, if I may, I did quite well last year in another photo comp. I got runner-up with the elephant puffing dust, and it was walking towards me, and I got the whole series of shots. And there was that one particular one where the dust it was a particular shape around its body. And for me, it was special. It was that moment. It was like my Attenborough moment. But again, you couldn't have timed it. If I may, I remember with my guests, I remember clearly I had 2 others in one vehicle and I had 3 in the other vehicle. And I said to the folks, we saw the elephants in the mud. They were bathing. I said, you never know. There's a chance. There's one walking towards us. I've watched enough documentaries over the years. There's a chance that it could spray dust on itself. And for those that don't know, the reason they do that and they cover themselves with mud and dust is it's either like a sunscreen or an insecticide or both. And the guys were like, oh, no, the elephant's walking slowly. There was some stalks carrying on to the right of the vehicle and they all pointed to the right. And I got the shot that's been so successful. And the point was they didn't take the opportunity. And luckily I knew that there was a chance that this would happen. And it just kept getting closer and closer. And then bang, and having that continuous focus or AI servo for the Canon users and having burst and getting every shot from when the dust is picked up by the trunk to the trunk lifting up to the dust being puffed out over the head of the animal. I mean, it was a magic moment. And I know we've seen that before, but I just thought, my goodness, this is my.
But herein lies what I was saying earlier. I mean, the fact is that because you've been to Africa a few times and you've seen this and you've seen the behavior of these animals, you can preempt that because you think, oh no, I've seen this before. But for somebody who's not been there before and not experienced it, they wouldn't necessarily know that. And I think herein lies the difference. And this is what this is the point I've been trying to make, is that, if you've gone there for the first time, it's really, really difficult to try and capture something different. And I completely understand that, which is why we get this sort of standard type image, because people don't know how these animals behave well enough to be able to anticipate a shot like that.
Yeah, you can't underestimate that, right? Knowing animal behavior helps you approach, helps you anticipate. That's so key when it comes to raising your imagery and the standard of your imagery.
Yeah, I mean, just think about the things that we all photograph locally, because we know them so well, because we photographed them so many times. A, we know their behaviors really well and we can anticipate those moments. And B, as we've said before, Josh, it doesn't matter if you go home empty-handed if you're trying something a little different and experimental, because you can go back tomorrow. You can't do that if you spent £10,000 or dollars or whatever it is going to Africa. You want to make sure you come back with something, at least that represents, a memory for you.
And with the new tech too, if you have an instance like Michael, I think you were saying that was in 2015. You were in Tanzania when the elephant came up.
Correct.
So people were probably shooting 7 frames a second. Marked, 1DX was 10 frames, maybe 12. Now we're at 30 frames a second full raw on certain cameras. So it's kind of amazing too how the technology and one thing I will say from my experience in Africa, and I'd like to hear your feedback on this too, with the increase in tech like the Z9, the R3. You can shoot at these higher ISOs and have great imagery. It helps with early morning or pre-dawn action, which is normally where you see stuff happening. So I've been able to get shots now pre-dawn or post after the sun goes down, beyond twilight, where, they're usable images. I'm shooting 10,000 ISO. I can get a leopard in a tree or eating something. Whereas previous trips, I never had that opportunity. The tech wasn't there for that.
This is spot on. We the last couple of weeks we had exactly the leopard in the tree. I mean, I know it's very special when you see one, and the good thing is, because of the cameras, because of the technology, and even programs like Topaz and DxO, which are remarkable for removing noise. I mean, we have Lightroom, we can remove noise, we can then sharpen the image, and to me, it's kind of, to a degree, it's like a silk purse out of a sow's ear. But when you are able to shoot at these incredibly high ISOs, and a couple of my guests that were a little bit newer, and they were so nervous and, oh no, it's too noisy. And I just said, look, shoot, because really a high ISO image that's sharp is going to win every time over a lower ISO image that's blurry. Let's think about it. I mean, so, and then we took them back, and we basically, I had Topaz on my laptop, and it was literally a jaw-dropping moment. And you can do that. And with the sensors being, and they're getting better and better, as you know, as you too, Rob. I mean, you know, what is happening. I mean, the Z8 is going to be announced any day soon. And I've read some of the specs of what they're rumoring, Nikon. Yeah, oh my God. And then you look at OM systems, what they're planning, and Canon. It's this wonderful. They're all leapfrogging each other.
Well, I mean, where's this going to be? Where's this going to be in 5 or 10 years' time?
Oh, within 12 months. I mean, it's remarkable. And there are images that I've gone back that I've shot with high ISO that I've tried to clean up, as you might call it, and I've just put them through Topaz, for example. I know Georgina, of course, one of the judges with the competition. She's been using it and raving about it for years. I took longer. I waited. I just wanted to wait, make sure. And then last year with the updates, I just said, this is, I cannot not do this. And I also tried DxO. They're both great programs. There are other programs out there. But can you imagine what you just said, Rob? In a few years, you'll be shooting at 150, 200,000, ISO. And the sensors will be great, let alone the fact that you can put it through these programs, shooting at low speed as well. I mean, de-sharpen Topaz.
I mean, the other thing to say is, and I don't know whether you two do this as well, but sometimes if you've shot something at high ISO, with the massive file sizes that we can all play with now, if noise is really a problem, we just shrink the image a bit, and it reduces the effect. I mean, do I need a 45 megapixel file for half the stuff, or most 95% of the stuff that I do? No, I don't need anything anywhere near as big as that. So if you shrink it down by 50%, you're going to reduce the effect of that noise anyway. Forgetting Topaz and all these other noise reduction programs.
And a little grain never hurt anybody. I don't mind a little grain. I talk to a lot of people, and they work so hard in these post-processing programs just to make it where there's no grain, everything's smooth, and it has an artificial look to me. So a little grain doesn't hurt.
No, and actually can be a really, can be really effective at times. I mean, I can think of
Trey Anfield shot that lion shake with the
the lion shake, and we're talking about African mammals here. The other one was Fred von Winkelmann. Do you remember his image of the elephants with he'd taken it out of the back of a vehicle at night or at dusk, coming back from obviously one of the trips out, one of the safaris out, and he had a group of elephants cross the vehicle as they went down the track, but another Jeep was coming from behind, so they were backlit with the headlights from the Jeep with a load of dust. It was taken at some ridiculous ISO setting, and it had loads of grain, but it was so good. It was because the grain really made it, because it made it feel like it was dusk. If it had been smooth, it wouldn't have worked half as well. So I think, depending on the situation, you're right. A bit of grain can actually add something.
Just to clarify that, I totally agree, guys. Absolutely. But again, when we talk noise, there's color noise. So your red RGB, red, green, blue artifacts, and then you've got your grain. And back in the film days, of course, if we wanted to purchase, you had the 100 ISO, 200, 400, 800, 1600, and the higher you went, the grainier it was. And some of the effects were amazing with black and white, with sepia, with so I get that. Yeah, totally. But when it comes to the color noise, which to me doesn't look great in an image, that's where the Topaz.
But I think you only really get that when you've pushed a file that you can't push. So the exposure isn't quite right, or you want to do something to it. I think the higher the ISO that you use, the less you've got the ability to really mess around with it. And when you start, that's when you start introducing that color noise, and it really starts to take effect. So I agree with you. That is really horrible when that happens, and it completely ruins an image.
I get a lot of it in darks at high ISO,
absolutely.
Your dark colors and
Yeah,
But my
that's it. If you're
teachings,
pushing shadows, for example, then you're going to get it there, aren't you?
correct,
Yeah.
correct. And my teachings now, and I've hit 27 years of photography, and this is my 20th of teaching. And I say to students, and I have, and anyone that's listening, any of my past, photography tour or workshop participants, I'm always espousing the fact that shoot with the lowest ISO you can get away with. So, we don't want to just shoot high and go, oh, we can fix it. Shoot with what you can get away. That's a general rule. But then when we're talking creativity, wow, let's do it. Let's just be different. And who would have thought those images that you just mentioned, Rob? I mean, they're amazing. And yet, oh no, people would say, oh, it's too high ISO, but no, it works. It really does work in those instances.
I did a talk recently, and somebody asked me, because I'm showing some of my pictures, and generally speaking, I'll shoot upwards of 1,000, even with good lights, because I don't worry about noise, because I know what the camera is capable of, and I would rather have more flexibility with shutter speed and aperture, and not worry about 1,000 ISO. Why would I? I mean, with a D850, the file size that I've got in good light, you're never going to see any noise. I mean, you're really not. And that surprised a few people. Well, why are you using such a high ISO? I said, well, why wouldn't I? And that was a real surprise. I said, I know the camera can handle it. I don't see any noise. Do you see any noise in this image? No. So why would I not have a faster shutter speed, for example, for photographing this bird in flight, or for capturing this action that I want to capture?
Absolutely.
Or why would I not use the aperture that I want to get the effect that I'm wanting in this image, and not worry about the ISO? So why would I not? And that surprises people, actually. Even now, I think what it is, perhaps, and this is, we're talking about perhaps people of our own generation here, that we used to film and know how much film degrades when you get past 400, and how much grain you used to get in those sort of faster films. I think that's still ingrained, if you pardon the pun, in people's minds of our generation. The younger generation of photographers who've been brought up on digital and have seen the progression of the technology aren't so worried about it.
Yeah. And there seems to be a reversal. I see a lot of, what would you say, Gen Z? Is it Gen Z or the young? They're using, they're buying film cameras, Polaroid and different types of cameras for, so it's kind of like things are going the other way.
It's retro, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's retro. Yeah, if
I
only
know this isn't the the podcast for it, but just on that comment, Josh, I love my music with a passion, and of course, we went through vinyl, cassettes, CDs, MP3s, iTunes, and now with streaming, with Spotify and beyond.
And now we're back to vinyl.
Friends with vinyl, and it is phenomenal. Like it is really, really turned around, and they can't press them quick enough. Like it's phenomenal. Plants are being built everywhere. Vinyl is back in a big way, and the same. I'm hearing more and more. Leica they've gone back to release a film camera. I mean, it's really fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah, a lot of people are using Leica for street art, like street photography. Leica seems to be pretty popular amongst photographers, but you're right. There's nothing that sounds like vinyl. It's got such an amazing sound. I don't think the 8-track will come back, thankfully, but I think vinyl might be here to stay.
My dad had one of those in one of his cars, the old 8-track cassette things.
Yeah, my grandfather did too. It was like I think it was a Chrysler Cordoba. Montalban used to advertise for that. The guy from anyhow, but
I think Dad's was a Toyota Corolla or something, one of the really early ones, something like that.
So, Josh, can I ask what were the other countries that you went to? You've been to Amboseli, you've been to Kenya. Where else have you been?
So I've been in Kenya. I've been to Amboseli, Samburu, and Masai Mara, and I've been to South Africa twice. I've been to Kruger. So one trip was Northern Kruger, from Satara up to what would that be? Punda Maria, I think. And then the other was from Satara down to Bergendal in the south. And
how was that?
Very different. Great.
How was?
They're very different. South Africa is much cheaper than Kenya, no doubt. It's about half the price as Kenya, but it's very different. You get similar animals, but it's a much brushier environment. You don't have those grand landscapes around. It's not as open. So it's a whole different photographic environment. When I'm in South Africa, I tend to go in tighter just because the brushiness and it's so busy, with a few exceptions. And then you can get wild dogs more easily in Kruger. I don't even know if there's wild dogs in some of those places in Kenya anymore. I know Zambia maybe, or
no, very few.
Yeah.
No, we didn't see any. Very few. I've been to Sabi, so Sabi, and which of course south of Kruger, and that was the difference. And the reason you've mentioned exactly what I was sort of thinking: the brush, the greenery. I mean, really high, and a lot of those spots, it's a bit trickier, to find the wildlife. But when you do, wow, it's fantastic.
Rhinos, it's great for rhino, white rhino. They're,
we had rhino with babies more than anywhere else in Africa. We had amazing giraffe imagery, and we had lots more leopards.
Yeah.
So it was great. But then you look at places like certainly Botswana, Kenya, the open plains. Again, very different. The other thing that I'll mention is, depending where you go, some areas like in Tanzania, for example, in the national park, you could only go on the roads because within the national park, and that's where you'd get a lot of other vehicles. They'd be all on the radio and they'd all come around when something was happening. Whereas in some of the conservancies, like where I was just last week, we could go anywhere, and the guides knew where the dens were. They knew where the leopard would go up the tree. They knew, and on a personal level, I really like that, to be able to go anywhere, and the most number of vehicles on that massive property, like it's huge. You could drive, we drive for half an hour without even blinking and not double up anywhere or more, like a huge area.
That's nice.
And the thing that I really loved, that 3-4 vehicles is the most you'd see, and were allowed. Whereas in some of the other locations, you'd get up to 25 vehicles turn up when the cheetahs were there, for example, which for me, it can be a little bit much when they all come around and they all race like crazy because they want their guests to see. And I do understand they want their guests to see the animals, but I prefer, I don't know how you feel, Josh, having been there, but I prefer that quieter
I mean, how much of a problem is that? The sort of vying for position between vehicles, because I've heard this.
Yep,
I've seen almost fist fights where vehicles.
You go, Josh, please.
Yeah, it gets pretty bad. I mean, we were in a situation where a leopard was hunting. I think it was Thompson's gazelle, and we got there fairly early. There was only one other vehicle, and then it turned into like 40, 45 vehicles. I mean, they formed a big U. I mean, so the leopard abandoned the hunt. The gazelle got away, and then the vehicles were jockeying for position. And then, obviously one will back up, and then a photographer will get blocked. There'll be some words exchanged, and it's an interesting thing. So yeah, I'm totally with you, Michael. Less the better. It's what I have heard. Actually, of course, the big crossing photographs in the Mara, that's one of the busiest areas. You go, I guess it's October, and you get all these vehicles when you have the wildebeest going across. In 2020, when right after COVID came out and most people were in lockdown, I know a few photographers who went over there, and they said it was glorious because there's very, very few people there, and it was amazing to be at these crossings, and you weren't competing with a lot of other photographers. But if I had to go back in time, I would have tried to get over there at that point in 2020. That would have been amazing.
I know a lady from the States who actually, during COVID, like in Australia, we couldn't fathom, as you heard earlier on in the podcast, that we were locked up for 2 years. I mean, we could not get out, not even New Zealand, like we couldn't get out. She was traveling, and she had her own vehicle, and she was at camp with one other person, and she said it was remarkable. It really, so I agree, it would have been incredible, amazing experience. But when I've got a really fantastic operator here in Australia that I deal with, that organises all my African tours, Encompass Africa, and honestly, they just know, and they know me as well. I mean, I try and get the best experience, for my guests at the best price possible, but it's more the fact of the experience. And if we can go somewhere where there's a chance of seeing A, B, C, D as far as wildlife, and you've got amazing lodging, staff, food, sure. But when you can go and you're the only one, or you might have one other vehicle and they talk on the radio and they communicate, it's fantastic. And I've been there. I've been in that experience where they all jostle and I'm standing there and I'm just thinking, this is nuts. They're all yelling and they're shouting and they're revving the engine to try to get the cheetah to move. And I mean, that doesn't happen everywhere, of course not. But I have seen it happen years ago in the very, very beginning. There was one experience like that. And since then, I've been sort of a little bit more careful as to where I choose.
Yeah. Because I mean, this is the side that you don't see. Because obviously you're looking through the lens, if we're all looking at these amazing shots of African wildlife, you're seeing what the photographer is seeing through the lens. You're not seeing what's behind the scenes. And I've heard this, that there can be almost fights, for position and numerous vehicles. And you have to wonder, the effect that is actually having on the wildlife at times. So I'm not saying it happens all the time, but there must be circumstances where it's, where, as you say, a predator actually, stops hunting its prey, abandons a hunt because of the attention that, it is being forced upon it by all the photographers that are crowding around.
And I've seen the opposite too, Rob. I've seen where leopards have actually used vehicles and hid under vehicles as a part of their attack scheme. So
wow,
it's
they learn, don't they?
Yeah. Smart. They go from one under,
Yeah. Last couple of weeks, guys, we had 3 leopard siblings, 2 females and a male. And they walked right across the plain. There was nothing anywhere. There were no trees, right up to our vehicle. And there was 2 vehicles. I was obviously in one and we've got the second one. And they lay underneath for shade. I mean, that is also incredible. And then one of them, as I said earlier, just went on the bonnet and just kind of like, look through. Suppose there's the usual tourists in the vehicle. And it was incredible. And they're relaxed. I mean, in most cases, the animals are quite relaxed. I have been there and seen that scenario where the cheetah, in this case, went for a kill, and because of a vehicle, she aborted. And it was late in the afternoon, and the guide said, that's not good because her cubs don't get fed.
Exactly.
So, but if I may, we talk about, the Kenyas and the South Africa and Botswana, but I've also been to Madagascar, and we talk about different and unique. Oh my goodness me, what an amazing place. And you talk about the, Galapagos. Well, in Madagascar, so I'm sure you guys both know, the wildlife types, the variety, the species is so unique. And I still remember, and there was none of you didn't have the big 5. It was fascinating. All the unbelievable, the chameleons and the lemurs and the shifachas, and that it was absolutely incredible. So that still a part of Africa. If you want to, Madagascar, there's one that, and I know people like Peter Bombuzek, he goes to places like that and he gets all these incredible shots.
Oh, it's just amazing, some of his stuff.
Yep.
And I hear like the deforestation and what's going on in Madagascar. I mean, a lot of people say go now because who knows what it's going to be like. I mean, it's sad in terms of what's going on.
Yeah, a friend of mine went a few years ago and he was shocked. He said, well, I was expecting all this amazing wildlife, which, he did see, but he said you drive through these areas that have just been decimated, and it's very, very depressing.
Yeah, it's horrible.
The pressure. I went, let's see, about 6 years ago, roughly. And even then, I was told there was only 8 or 9% of the original rainforest left. And we went through Antananarivo, the capital, and it was the single most, what's the word? I mean, not depressing, but real eye-opener. The poverty was so extreme that to see that for a day and then drive up, and of course you go up to these luxurious lodges and you're treated like, you know, the king, the queen, and the heir apparents. It's the first and only time I felt really a little bit uneasy, because the poverty is unbelievable. And so we can all say it's so wrong, the land clearing and all that, and because we love nature, wildlife, the environment, and I understand that. But when you look at the locals, who their number one aim, they just simply want to feed their family.
Yeah.
Right, survival for them, isn't it? I mean, you know, it's all right. It's all right for us, isn't it? We can afford it. If you see what I mean, we can afford to have these views and opinions. Which,
and the thing that I find an issue, and this is without getting too much on my soapbox, but it's when the governments, the greedy, you know, they get in and, you know, they clear and the locals get nothing and they line their pockets. That's for me, the politicians, and you know, that's the issue. But Madagascar as a whole, like the areas that we went to, and to see, you know, the lemurs out in the wild, and you know, I could only dream, and it really was special. And again, the little stuff, the unusual, and I found that just as exciting and as wonderful to see in photograph as the big stuff in Africa.
Isn't it a shame that, you know, that species like lions and elephants, those are the sort of things that an economy can be based upon, because people want to photograph them, they want to come and see them. So you can create, you know, a thriving economy around those species. But when you're talking about the smaller stuff on Madagascar, it doesn't have the same sort of appeal, I think, to the masses. So it's going to be more. It's going to be far more difficult to, you know. And there's an irony in that.
Yeah.
You know, which I find. You know, wouldn't it be nice, you know, for those people to be able to forge a living from protecting the species that island has, rather than having to, you know, exploit it in other ways that is detrimental to the environment. You know, we saw it with whale sharks, didn't we? And that the picture from the first Wild Art photographer, the first winner, you know, where obviously that was taken in the Philippines, and the locals are now feeding those animals because people want to come and see them and photograph them.
That was Chabas, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. And but then again, there's an irony in that as well, in the fact that because they're feeding them, they're delaying their migration. So, you know, we're having an effect whatever we do, but it's far better than killing them, obviously. But it is all about, you know, people. I don't think people want to exploit animals by killing them necessarily. It's just the only way in many cases that they understand that they can make a living, you know, and they're forced into it. And I think there would be a lot of poachers that would turn the other cheek, as it were, and make a living from photography and from animal tourism, as opposed to killing. I think they far rather do that. It's just that it's an education thing.
I think for me, the best example, I don't think anything comes close. This is just my opinion. You talk about poachers and we talk about animals, and as soon as I mention, you'll know I'm talking about the gorillas in Rwanda, for example. I mean, these animals were poached. They're in an area, and the pressure of farming at the base of the Virunga National Park is full on, and yet there hasn't been a single poached gorilla. So I was there, let's just go back, for over 20 years. Their numbers, their breeding, it's exponential growth. It is tens of thousands of people that are directly or indirectly, it's probably even more, that benefit from tourism and paying these really high rates to, you know, $1,500 US was what I remember last time for an hour. But when you think about it, it's amazing, because you've got the guides, you've got the trackers, you've got the people, the second generation poachers that now have shops set up, and the tourists then go down the hill, they get driven, they spend money. I think it's amazing. It really is. And for me, the single best experience of anything I've ever done anywhere in the world in my life to do with photography, and we're talking Africa here, it's the gorillas in Rwanda. It is. I've been 3 times, fortunately, with 2 treks each time, 6 treks.
I was
And
going to
each
ask you
time-
that question. What's your favorite African moment?
That's
You
it.
just answered
I've
it.
answered it,
Yeah.
Rob. Having grown up with Diane Fossey, Gorillas in the Mist, having read the books, to me it was such an unbelievable story, and even just the thought of getting near them or seeing them was so far-fetched when I was younger. And seeing the movie with Sigourney Weaver, I went to the cinema, I saw it, and then to think that I'm up there and that close and having the young ones excuse me, brush up against me, and having a gorilla with a baby on her back right there 2 meters in front of me, where I've got to change my lens to a 70-200 or a 24-70 on a full frame camera because she's so close with a baby. I mean, and little ones wrestling in front of you, and the silverback having a bit of a moment where he suddenly gets up and he beats his chest and you just about poop your pants. and then like, wow. And really, that to me has been the greatest. That's something that I recommend to anyone who's got the inclination, the money, it's a fabulous experience. Really is.
What about you, Josh? What's your favorite African moment?
I'll tell you, I can tell you what my favorite moment is that I have not seen yet that I wanted to do, actually. And it's similar to the gorillas. I was going to go to Gabon a couple of years ago. We backed out. There were some concerns last minute around some of the prep work that was done, and there were some things going on. But I wanted to go for the mandrill. I've always wanted to see mandrill in the wild and get those classic portrait shots of frame filling with the face and the color. So that's something I've always wanted to do. But as far as experience goes, boy, it's tough. There's not one thing I should say that really stands out. Well, the one instance actually was in Kruger. We were on this bridge. It wasn't great photographically, but it was just one of those experiences that you see. There was a pride of lions on a zebra, a dead zebra. They killed the zebra. They're feeding on the zebra. And this small grouping of elephants were coming. There was the matriarch and there was a young one. And they attacked the lions, and there was a standoff, and it was amazing. I got a few shots at the end where there was one male lion walking away, and his whole face was just, blood covered, from the zebra, and you could see the matriarch behind, charging him, getting him off, and he kind of had a nonchalant look on his face, but it was pretty amazing. Right after that happened, we had a few rhinos that showed up in the riverbed as well. So just that string of events that happened.
Makes it stick in your mind.
Amazing. Yeah.
Oh, here's a question for you, Michael. If you could only take one lens with you on your travels to Africa, what would it be?
Straight answer. I've got one. My 500 PF 5.6.
Nice and light,
for
right?
those that don't know, Nikon have been releasing these lenses, which the PF lenses, which are basically half the weight, half the size, roughly half the price. Phenomenal.
I was going to say that's the most important thing.
Yeah. And I put that. I use that, of course, with my the Z9, and as you say, Rob, Z9. Amazing, and the sharpness, the clarity, the speed of focus. I put that in my pack, and it's on my shoulder. I've got a 70-200 2.8 with a 2-time converter. I've got a 24-70. I've got all of that. The fisheye. Honestly, though, that 500 PF is a beauty. Really love it. Love that lens. Yeah. What about you, Josh?
Yeah. What about you, Josh? What would you take?
I'd say probably the 70-200 f2.8 because it's fast. You can get, really widescapes incorporating animals within the environment. And you can, a lot of animals you can get close to as well. So you can put on a telly. It's very versatile. So I'd probably say the 70-200 f2.8.
Okay. Josh, do you know that exact lens with the 2 times is what I took to many African trips up until I bought and I now take both. But seriously, that is what I used. And so I had amazing.
Do you know what? That is one of the few few zooms that actually works okay with a telly.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, they work great. Yeah,
they do.
Yeah. And with the Nikon, with the Mark III, which has been around for years, the 2 times and the 1.4 time telly, the thing is, they're being built for each other, and the lack. I mean, years back, many years with versions 1 and 2, you really did have a bit of a quality loss there. But there's very little, and I'm curious what you think, Josh. But there's very little quality loss with the Nikon 70-200 with the 2 times. It's actually quite sharp at 400.
I've heard that. So I shoot the Canon 70-200 with the tellies.
Yep.
The tellies are great with Canon. Although years ago, I have a lot of Nikon shooter friends, and they used to tell me, was it the 1.7 and the 2 times? I think those were the Canon, the 1.4 and the 2 times. I think it was the doubler, the 2 times. They had some quality loss issues, but this was going years back.
They've really improved it very much.
That's what I heard.
Okay. Final question for you, Michael. If somebody who hasn't been to Africa before, where would you recommend they go first?
Kenya. I didn't even blink.
Yeah. What about you, Josh?
Yeah, I mean, Kenya's amazing. I can't argue with that. I mean, Kenya's incredible, and there's so many different types of environments. If you want to photograph elephants, Michael, I think you'll agree, Amboseli is the #1 place on the planet to photograph elephants.
Yep.
And you have the Mara. I mean, Kenya.
Yeah, great stuff.
Botswana's pretty good too, by the way. Oh, hang on, Tanzania.
No, hang on. You can't. No, you can't do that. It's one place.
I know.
It's like you with your blooming lenses. I asked you for one lens. It's like lists off a load.
Yeah, I know.
Anyway, Michael, this has been a great discussion. Thank you so much for coming on. Where can people find you? Have you got a website or social media accounts? Well, I know you have. Why don't you tell people where they can find you?
Sure. So my business is called Wild Nature Photo Expeditions. So basically wildnaturephotoexpeditions.com. And even though I'm Australian based, I have had people from across the world, including from the States, come along on my tours. And next week, I'm planning already for African tours for later next year. A couple of photo tours and a few back-to-back. It's very, very special. And as much as I do this for a living, when I'm there and I'm there to help people, my guests, I absolutely love the experience. I love being there. And the reason I keep going back, it's as Josh has said, it's very special. And we're going to work on getting you there, I'm telling you.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. It's been on my bucket list for a long time.
Actually, what about a trio? What about Josh Galicki, Rob Reed, and Michael Snedic going on a trio to Africa? This could be the beginning of something special.
Yeah, sounds like a plan.
Talk to Jen.
Yeah. Anyway, Michael, thank you so much. It's been great having you on. It's been really good to talk about your trips and about everything about African wildlife. And Josh, thanks for coming on and sharing your experiences as well. It's been really good to talk to both of you again. I don't know what's next. I don't know what we're going to do next, Josh. We have to think about the next podcast. But I know we've got a few more guests lined up.
Yeah.
When we can actually arrange it and record these things. We're a bit like getting Michael and you together at the same time, being on different sides of the world. It's quite tricky at times, but we've got loads of stuff planned. So we'll think of something.
Thanks for the invite. Great to talk to you guys. I'm a fan, of course. It's I've listened to all of them, and it's great to be a part of it. And thanks again. Thanks very much.
No problem.
Great.
Well, we'll link your website and your Instagram account and whatever in the show notes. So look out for those. But
that's great. Thank you.
Brilliant. Well, thank you everybody for listening. I hope you've really enjoyed that chat. And we'll see you again next time. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Okay,
Thanks, Michael.
You have been listening to the Wildlife Photography Podcast. If you have enjoyed the content, then please help us to spread the word by sharing a link on your social media platforms, giving us a like, and leaving us a comment. See you all again next time.